Hi, I'm Andrea Klim, and you are watching Turn to the Stars. And today is November 18th, 2014, and the topics on Turn to the Stars this week. For just a couple of minutes in the beginning of the show, I want to share with you some news from Turn to the Stars, and then I'm going to continue with part 2 of Saturn moving through the constellation of Sagittarius. And so for the news at Turn to the Stars, I have a little slide that I'm going to put on the screen, and I talked about this last week on Turn to the Stars because it is a very important event for Turn to the Stars. We have 6 of these psychic and holistic fairs every year in our community here in Manchester, New Hampshire and surrounding communities. This is a very important event because we are continually raising the awareness to the quality of holistic healing. Very, very important for us, for humanity. And so this is this Saturday, November 22nd from 10 to 4, and the theme of this fair is an exploration into the unknown, and we do have 11 insightful types of readings to offer, 4 healing therapists, and 5 holistic vendors. We're a really great group of people, and we will really look forward to seeing you on Saturday in our major feature event of the day from 1 to 3 p.m. is a spirit's journey beyond the veil, and this is an evidential mediumship gallery, and again 1 to 3, and we've had a little bit of change in our venue of the spirit mediums who are going to be offering this event. Sheila Clark was going to be working with Danielle Dion, but Sheila has had a death in the family, and so she won't be able to be joining us on Saturday, but Danielle Dion will be running the mediumship gallery and bringing the messages forth for our audience and everyone who attends. And she is a very, very gifted medium, and she has studied at the Arthur Findlay College in England, and she is, I would say, one of the most popular mediums at our fairs over the last 4 years. So we do look forward to seeing you at the fair on Saturday. And I want to thank you for all your continued support. So I'm going to continue on with Saturn. Talking about Saturn in Sagittarius, which, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, this is going to be from December 23rd. That should be December 23rd. I think we have a little typo there. That's my fault. But it is December 23rd of 2014 through December 19th of 2017. Saturn is, the 7 planet out, if you count Earth from the sun. And it is a planet that really holds us fast to our responsibilities and to our duties, and really asks us to contemplate where we're going and what we're going to be doing. And there's a very serious side to Saturn because it does test us. It does bring in those restrictions, and it is one of the planets that has an influence over the things that we learn. So we call it the teacher or the taskmaster. I always think of Saturn as Father Time, the controller, the seeker of perfection. It's through this energy, and it does bring us those limitations which cause us to be cautious. And it does remind us about structure, about form, about the old ways, traditions, and restraint. And it brings a sense of seriousness. And you can see people be more defensive or protective of themselves that have a lot of Saturnian energy. And it rules over work and the person who provided the discipline in our lives as we grew, and those forms that provide discipline along the way. And it is also one of the planets we talk about as being the Lord of Karma. In a very positive sense, it is one of the planets that really guides us to be patient. to have self-discipline, to be in, to have self-control and to be responsible and to be thrifty, and also diplomatic. And it is one of the planets that can taught, that we can learn through its energy about endurance and about respect and about order. And it is the planet that really we look to for the upholding of rules. And as I said earlier, contemplation. I was at an astrology seminar probably a month ago, back in October, and the astrologer Robert Hahn, who many of you may have known, talked about Saturn as being a planet of contemplation. And in the most negative sides of Saturn are fearfulness, suppression, miserliness, and pessimism, sternness, rigidity, and it can be very harsh and very cold. I always counsel my clients when they have Saturnian rulership, especially of, ruling their chart or their sun sign is in Capricorn. Do things to warm your life up rather than being so serious. Do things to bring some joy, some happiness, because it's such a serious energy. So I want to tell you a little bit physically about the planet of Saturn. As many of you know, it has rings, and it has 7 major rings. And 4 of that main group of the rings, 4 of them are main, the main rings, and there's 3 that are fainter, or they're in what we would call a narrow group of rings. These groups, those rings that are around Saturn, are separated by gaps called divisions. So in a close-up view of Saturn's rings, the Voyager spacecraft, which flew by Saturn in 1980 and 1981, showed that these 7 ring groups are made up of thousands of smaller rings. And in my research in preparing for today's show, I came across something that said that those rings were actually formed by space debris that broke up, and the gravitational pull holds them there. And one day on Saturn takes about 10.7 hours. That's their day, their light that shines on Saturn. And basically that's the time it takes for Saturn to rotate or spin once around. Saturn makes a complete orbit around the sun. A year in Saturnian time is actually 29 Earth years. So here is why one of our words that we use in astrology to describe Saturn is limitation. You look at those rings that are around Saturn, you know that there is a sense of limitation because it's protected by those rings as well. Saturn actually rotates in the same direction as we do here on Earth, which is from west to east. And Saturn is what we call a gas giant planet, and it does not have a solid surface. So its atmosphere is made up mostly of hydrogen and helium. And Saturn actually has 53 moons, and there's actually 9 awaiting confirmation of their discovery, and some of them are thought to be able to sustain life. I don't know if any of you have seen the new movie that's out in the movie theater that just came out, Interstellar. Their mission finds them in the end finding a moon of Saturn's which they begin to build a home on or to habitate. Actually, before that, they form a station which they call Murphy's Station. Murphy, I forget the last name of the one of the main characters, but it's called, they build a station in space, but then in the end they are habitating, beginning to habitate a moon, which is one of Saturn's moons. So that I found that real interesting. Here's some facts about Saturn in Sagittarius. The elemental nature of Sagittarius is hot and humid. It is fiery and mutable. It's a fire sign. It's a mutable sign. while the humor of Saturn is one of melancholy. You heard the words that I used in describing the energy of this planet. One of the most notable Sagittarian Saturns was Mahatma Gandhi. And Mahatma Gandhi was an Indian nationalist leader who was born on October 2nd of 1869 in Porbandar, Kathiawar, India. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he was from India. While he was born under the sun sign of Libra, he was born with Saturn in the constellation of Sagittarius. And it's interesting because I have a whole Astrology 102 class of students that is made up, everyone in that class has Saturn in Sagittarius. So their work is to search for and to discover new thought patterns, and they're very, they tend to work on building on optimism in their lives. And so Mahatma Gandhi studied in London, England, but in 1893 he went to South Africa, where he spent about 20 years opposing discriminatory legislation against Indians. And his history is of his work in the arena of law and fairness, which are Sagittarian-ruled areas. So work is Saturn's realm, while law is Sagittarius' realm as well. If you look into your birth chart or you've had an astrology reading and you find out that you have Saturn in Sagittarius, it shows you where your life work will be. And that was true for Mahatma Gandhi. And the achievements that he made in his life, or his Saturnian goal, was made through the use of every benefit available and every gift from Jupiter, namely nonviolence based on religious and spiritual convictions, legal and political publishing and media coverage of his campaign. Those are all Sagittarian-ruled areas. His goals and his ambitions were eventually successful because he worked with the tool of Sagittarius. So wherever Saturn is in your chart, if you understand the zodiac sign that it is in at your birth, you will know where your life work resides. So because the zodiac sign Sagittarius is ruled by the planet Jupiter. So Mahatma Gandhi was inspired to work for complete generosity. His work was to get his message of fair treatment and to publicize it and to develop laws which would incorporate fairness and generosity. And like Pisces, Sagittarius Saturn is under the guidance of the greater beneficial of Jupiter. And although on the surface, the two planets seem, they've been described as Saturn being like chalk and Sagittarius or Jupiter being like cheese, soft. Saturn and Sagittarius appears to be, they truly are of opposite natures. Saturn is about restriction, limitation, where Jupiter is about expansion and optimism. So Saturn speaks of limitation and contraction, and Sagittarius influences, they're all about expansion and enthusiasm. When Saturn is in Sagittarius, it can cause confusion because of their very opposite natures. In mythology, Jupiter, which was thought was the god that was aligned with Jupiter, was Zeus. And he opposed his father, Saturn, who was Kronos, in order to take over and govern the heavens. They were both, in one sense, associated with authority and being the highest and most dignified of all gods. In one sense, Sagittarius represents our ascent or movement in an upward direction, while Saturn, on the other hand, is the planet that influences us to consistently work to get to that high place and to work to stay there. So the feeling that I get with Saturn in Sagittarius is that it will influence us to climb up the ladders in our lives. And the Sagittarius energy indicates that we will have good luck along the way. We say that Saturn is peregrine in Sagittarius. Anybody who studies astrology would know that the word peregrine means that it's not in its own land. So Saturn is kind of like in foreign land when it's in the sign of Sagittarius. And so it's kind of like a foreign tool for Saturn to work with. So while Saturn is in Sagittarius, will influence us to build solid foundations while at the same time move forward. So if you are in a foreign territory, this would be easier to be done. But when you're living at home and the influences around you are saying, let's learn some new things, some new thoughts, some new ideals. Let's go discover. Saturn would really influence us, as it's in this sign, to respect and consider the traditions of old. And while we are in this transit, people may be apt to feel as if they're investigating many new subjects, many new philosophies, and at the same time give respect to their traditional values, and at the same time adapting to the new ideals and knowledge that are entering. Do you see what I mean? The very opposite. However, how do we integrate this energy? So it will become the norm to feel as if you're in an alien during this transit. And it's like, this is really alien to my belief system. But that's exactly what you should be feeling. So while Saturn is in Sagittarius, you may find that you're on a search for your higher self. You're on a search for the truth. And you're on a search for what is the truth about what I believe in. And you'll be on a search to discover what culture makes moral sense to you. As Saturn will be in this foreign fire sign of Sagittarius, it reminds me of some of the debilities where Saturn, if it's placed in Leo or in Aries, when it moves through those constellations, it's similar to Saturn being in Sagittarius, because Saturn says, I need to work. You need to be responsible. You need to be serious. If it's in the sign of Leo, Leo's not serious. Leo's fun-loving. Aries is, interested in aggressive forward movement. So it's very similar. We can compare those. Saturn's influence while in Sagittarius will inspire you to go on spiritual quests, which may be easier than if it was in Leo or Aries. So that's one of the good things about Saturn in Sagittarius. Saturn represents our work, and our work will become to build on our enthusiasm and to learn and to travel and to have faith and vision. One great Sagittarius Saturn was Che Guevara, who was a revolutionary. And you can look up his story, but the little information that I can give you about him is that his story is about traveling and learning about people directly, about his continent's suffering and its lack of opportunities. And then he stood up for them using a committed set of beliefs. That's Saturn, commitment, which really were of Marxism, in order to bring hope and change. So his dreams of revolution, bringing hope and raising people, were actually fulfilled in Cuba, but not in the rest of South America. So Saturn's influence makes it difficult to travel light, because Saturn's natural influence is to travel with everything it owns, and it tends to, in the sign of Sagittarius, want to travel. And so you may find yourself traveling with everything that you have, and seriously, Saturn is about seriousness, will make life on the road your home. So positive developments while Saturn is in Sagittarius will be to develop understanding, tolerance, and a healthy and happy attitude towards your life, with a faith in the future while avoiding thinking negative thoughts. It seems the game plan for Saturn, while in the constellation of Sagittarius, will be to build on positivity, joy, humor, and spontaneity. So while this Saturn is in this constellation, you could be inspired to work on releasing your fears of forward movement and to discover that your needs will be met through exploring the vast world of opportunity around you. So first, the first key dates for Saturn's movement into the constellation of Sagittarius will be the square it forms to Neptune in Pisces. So also, I've got a couple charts here that I want to show you, which are going to bring to your eye the planetary aspects that will be delivering some insight in the times where this energy will be prominent. So the first chart I have is actually what you saw on last week's show, which is this Saturday, the new moon in Sagittarius, which you can see down on the bottom left. And you do see Saturn right in that cluster of planets. Right beside the moon is Saturn at 26 of Scorpio. So you can see it's getting closer to making its transition into the constellation of Sagittarius. And why I'm pointing out this chart today is because I'd like everyone watching this show to take note of the theme that this new moon brings into your life, because it will be prominent and important as Saturn moves into Sagittarius on December 23rd. And the next chart I have is of December 21st. And this is actually showing the new moon and also the winter solstice. You can see on the bottom the big circle with the sun and moon at 0 Capricorn. And you can see this influence with Saturn beginning to develop. There's what we call a semi-sextile to Saturn by this new moon. So the theme here is one of responsibility, and that we're beginning to have this insight into what Saturn's path through Sagittarius is going to be about on that new moon. And the next chart I have is one you saw last week also, which is of Saturn in Sagittarius. And we can see that it is at 00 on December 23rd. And I'm going to move through these charts quickly. The next chart I have is of January 20th. And this is actually when we begin to see on this new moon in Aquarius, which you can see over to the left, the moon and the sun together at 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's actually in what we call a sextile to Saturn, which is indicating that there is some relief and that we are starting to really understand the work that is ahead of us. And, you know, Saturn's interesting because it holds us to our plan. And the last chart I have is actually of January 20th. And it is actually the same chart you just saw, but I'm pointing out and highlighting in this chart that square that is in development and is what we call applying to Neptune. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about Neptune, because Neptune, what it's going to help us to do is dissolve what we consider our structure, which is Saturn, and some things may come to an end, especially if there's aspects in your personal astrology chart. And during this period, we could experience an uncomfortable period of time where situations, ideas, even people dissolve from our lives. And the new has not yet emerged. So stay optimistic. Work on connecting to that higher self. Very important, because the old patterns will fade away, only to make room for what is new that's coming into your life. But I want to remind you, this isn't going to happen overnight. Saturn-Neptune squares can relate and bring in confusion, lack of clarity, or, you know, you might also be very confused and feel like you're being lied to, and you may be. So you're going to need some time to contemplate that. And very important, this is a difficult, challenging aspect that we're going to be faced with. So on the other hand, this transit may help to give concrete realization to long-held dreams And during this period, they may take form after a period of time, and through a great deal of contemplation, hard work, and effort, which is Saturn's realm, you'll find that these things are going to be beneficial. And the people that are mostly affected during this time will be people that are born around February 24th through 28th, May 27th through the 31st, August 29th through September 2nd, and November 28th through December 2nd. Other people affected will be those born during the Neptune and Sagittarius generation, which is if you're born between 1973 to 1974, or if you're somebody with personal planets and mutable signs, and by that I mean Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, and the degrees are between 5 and 9. As a whole, there's going to be many ideas that will dissolve or change form during this transit between Saturn and Neptune. Politics, governments, and laws will all be affected, and we may see changes in the legal status, around legalizing marijuana. Water shortages, as Neptune is in Pisces, problems with water and with the oceans, scandals coming up in religious sectors and the churches. And the other thing, because of Neptune in Pisces, is the spread of disease, among other things. And during my research, I found some information by Nicholas Campion, who is an astrologer, very well-known astrologer, about Saturn squaring Neptune. And he said that he saw Saturn squaring Neptune as benefiting democracy, political changes coming in, and reforms. And so that's pretty important to talk about. And he also pointed out that in 1846, which was a very similar transit, was followed by the publication of the Communist Manifesto, and the main phases of this cycle trace the development and establishment of the main European socialist parties. That was around 1882, and in 1917, immediate following the next one, transit of this was 1952, which brought the death of Stalin and the beginning of the expansion of Soviet communist influence into Africa and the Third World. So there's Saturn, through Sagittarius, will work best for people who have planets such as Leo, Aquarius, Aries, Libra, and it'll be more challenging for Sagittarians, Pisces, Virgos, and Geminis. And I know we're very close to the end of this show. So what I do want to say is that when Jupiter moves into Virgo in August of 2015 next year, it may bring forth auditors. Money is one of the areas that's associated with Jupiter. So that's something to look out for. And it is possible that during this time and the difficulties that we do find some answers to the Ebola virus. And so I want to say to everyone, thank you for watching Turn to the Stars. And until next time, remember, turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.